So, hey guys, happy to join the chat if you guys want to. But Supercoach 2023 is out, and in today's video, we're gonna have a look at everything. So, hope you guys enjoy. It's my first time actually seeing the team picker for this year. There's been a few people having a look and posting prices and things like that. I've seen a few kind of teams come out, but this is really my first time looking at it. This year, I kind of wanted to have the idea of stacking the back line, just because I kind of think that similar to last year, there's not going to be as many options in that kind of mid-price to cheapo price range. So we'll have a look today if that's really kind of feasible. If not, we'll see what we can do with guys like McKenna, guys like McKenna, just depending on what their price is like, and some other rookies. We'll go through the mids as well and kind of see, what our popular picks, the prices are going to be. And then also in the rucks and the forward lines as well. So let's have a quick look. Wow. So pretty crazy to think that Sinclair is actually the highest priced defender, coming off what he was last year at like 460K. I feel like, you'd pick him, I guess, but really not at 626. He's definitely going to be an upgrade target there for me. I won't be starting him, and I won't feature him early like I did in 2022, but we'll see what happens, really. Let's kind of go down the prices a little bit. So Sinclair, 626. Sicily, similar price to what he was last year. I think he was probably at 606 last year, and now he's 620, 624. Oh yeah, by the way, I've got my KFC here for our KFC Supercoach, so that should be fun. Scrolling down. So Doherty 603 provides some value, but I still think he's a little bit overpriced. I reckon a lot of players this year are going to be like that, but you really have to start one or two, or probably even three or four of them, depending on what you're going like. Hopefully there's some value between 500 and 600K that we can really take advantage of. And even that kind of 460 to 500K price point in the defense that a lot of players kind of exploited. Your Whitfields a little bit, but also your Sinclairs as well. That kind of price point is going to be pretty juicy for us. So let's have a look. Jordan Dawson's there, 603. Shannon Hearn, 570. So probably don't pick him. Sard as well. Bailey Dale could be a shout. I think he might move a little bit more half-back wing. So there might be some chance of, some decent 100-plus scoring with that, but we'll just wait and see. I know Bailey Dale did a bit of that in the second half of the season last year, and that's why his scoring fluctuated quite a lot. He wasn't getting just pure half-back numbers and kick-ins like we expected for the first half of the season, which really hurt me because I had him in my side. Witherden as well, 550K. I don't think we're going to pick him. Brayshaw's there at 530. Vastulin, Houston. Aaron Hall could be a bit of a shout if you're really gutsy. I know he's been doing all right in the preseason, but you really have to be pretty keen to get him in. Luke Ryan as well, similar story. Rich coming. Now, Mason Redmond. He's someone at 510K who you could really, really have a look at and might be a good pricey pick. I know his last half of the season was fantastic. If we can just pull up. Is that going to mess with the stream too much? No. All right. If we just pull up big Mason Redmond. His scoring wasn't fantastic, but did have some pretty big games in there as well. So we see a 170, a 150, a few scores, decently 100 scores. Could be a bit of a shout if you think maybe he's going to keep his spot and get better. I know Ridley's looking like he might get opened up a little bit more, and we'll just wait and see what happens with him. Just scrolling down. Hayden Young's a similar position. Guy who could really break out, has had some big scores, but, kind of like Luke Ryan has to really make the jump there. Looking down, there is some value at the 500K mark there as well. You've got guys like Ridley who you'd assume would make another step in that back line. Brad Scott, I think, will probably run him as an interceptor, like we can imagine. And at 500K, you could do a lot worse. Similar with the Dacos at 500K as well. So 502. And big old Harry Himmelberg. I know he's had some monster scores. I did play him last year. He was fantastic when I brought him in at like 370. So, yeah, we'll just wait and see what happens. I know there's some talk that maybe he's playing in the forward line. So we'll just wait and see. If he comes out and he's dominating, then it's going to be fantastic for us. Scrolling down. So Tui's there, probably not. Nick Hind, no. Let's keep looking. Mitch Duncan, maybe. I think it's pushing it pretty hard. Here's two guys that could kind of make the jump into stardom for next year. So you got Andy McGrath there. Not Andy McGrath. We got Kadeem Coleman. Had some really, really good games last year. I'm surprised he's this expensive, kind of looking at what he was priced at the end of last year. But, you know, at 480K, would you pick him? I think if you were desperate, you could give him a shot in that back line. Nick Blakey's one that I'm looking at as well. So dominated quite a few games last year, racked up the pill, took kick-ins, took other things. He's kind of that distributor off the back line. So similar to what Jake Lloyd was a few years ago, Nick Blakey's probably coming into that mold right now. And I know he did really well last year. He was really good for the people that picked him up at a cheaper price and held him for quite a long time. And he could really provide some value there as well. Just scrolling down. So Ed Richards as well had some monster games. Monster games. And yeah, he's not doing too bad. Sorry about that. So yeah, just scrolling down, we've got Maynard as well there. Probably doesn't provide too much value for the price. Darcy Moore as well. Further scrolling down, is there anyone here who could really, really provide some value? Let's have a quick look. Zach Williams as well. I remember, I think he was 400K 2 years ago, and now he's back to being 425. Let's have a quick look. Griffin Lowe could. I think he's going to play a bit of an interceptor role there, but I probably wouldn't pick him just because he's pretty unproven at North Melbourne. He did well at Freo, but we'll just wait and see with him. Frampton, not so much. And then just further down, so, you know, godsend Paddy McCartan is now way too expensive to pick. You could take him in if you were super gutsy, but, you know, it's a bit tough there. Same with Lockie Young as well. Is there anyone really off the first look who could provide some real value at that 300K price point? Let's have a quick look. Look, off the top of my head, there's not really anyone here so far. No one's really jumping out. If you were gutsy, you could pick a Hunter Clark. I know North Melbourne almost poached him, and St Kilda might be trying to look to play him a lot more, especially off that half back line, maybe similar to a Brad Hill, play one on each side. I reckon he's going to end up playing a lot just because, you know, they want to play the player so they can keep him, right? Keep scrolling down. Jace Burgoyne. And then we really come into our rookies here. So guys who played a little bit last year who are going to do well. So Callum Dawson's probably one of them. Massimo's there as well. You got your Flynn Perez as well. Cooper Sharman did all right for a while, but they're just so expensive. They're really, really expensive. So it looks like we might only be taking one or two defenders off the top of my head anyway. I could be incorrect, team sheets come out, preseason form, that kind of thing. But it really looks like we're not going to be taking much more than probably two defender rookies on field. So going back to what I was talking about originally with Supercoach and stacking the backline similar to how we did in 2022, I think that's going to be the play. Maybe 5 or 6 defenders if you can swing it. At least probably 4. 3 or 4 with your fourth being a mid-pricer if there's someone who really comes out and forces themselves in your team. If not, 5 or 4 there. Let me go. Yeah, as Corey says here, yeah, this year definitely the players are so much more expensive than kind of what we've seen from last year and previous years too. Corey, we're just going over the defenders especially, and there really doesn't seem to be that much value in that 400, 460 plus mark. There is a few players at 500, like you could take your Dacos, your Ridley, if you were keen. I know Sam Taylor had some decent scoring at one point. Redmond potentially as well. And then the other guys are super expensive. So there really doesn't seem to be at the moment that kind of Jack Sinclair type around that 460k mark. Maybe a Blakey if you're lucky, that kind of thing. Let's quickly take a look at the midfield now. Wow. So most expensive player, I'm pretty sure, is going to be Rory Laird this year. I don't think there's going to be a ruckman that competes with him in price, but you've got to think that that's really worth it, right? Rory Laird, 700k. He did not have many games last year where he put out a stinker and really dropped in price. But at 700k, he's going to have to score like 130s every week. Otherwise, he is going to drop in price and could provide some real value. If he comes out and Adelaide has a bit of a stinker game and he drops an 80, he could easily be under 550, under 600k really, come rounds 6 to 9. At some point in there, he could really provide that value and kind of that upgrade target, the first upgrade target you want, that could be him. Similar to a Clayton Oliver, who did score really well, didn't really drop to under 600k, but was around the mark there as well. Lockie Neal, sadly, we won't be picking him up at 540k to start the season. Touk Miller as well, 660. It's pretty rough. Just quickly looking at the top 4, potentially people might be trying to play them, and how much are they going to cost? So to get the top 4 mids, scoring wise at least on average, wow, that's almost $3 million already. So basically, to get the top 4, it's going to cost you close to a third of your whole entire bank, which would really, really force you to pick up some good mid prices later on. And we'll have a look at those mid prices, especially in the midfield, as we come up to them in the look. Callum Mills as well, fantastic pod pick last year for those that had him. Dropped a couple of huge numbers. And you're paying for it now. Bontempelli, I have a feeling, will be a highly picked player just because of guys coming in and kind of not forcing him out of that forward line, but taking away the necessity for him to play forward at the Dogs. With Bruce, with Lobb coming in, they don't need that tall player in the forward line, especially with Jamara coming in as well. They don't really need him. And with Dunkley coming out, he could almost have 100% mid-time at the Dogs, you'd think, which would be fantastic for his scoring. He does get a bit of score from those goals, but he could easily do the, carry the ball through the mid, kick a goal on that half-forward line. And being, 600k cheaper than Rory Laird, similar to Clayton Oliver, like 40k cheaper than Neil, you're going to have dilemmas where you might have to pick a Bontempelli over a Touk Miller, over a Clayton Oliver, just to start to kind of make your players fit. Scrolling down a little bit, Jack McRae as well. So similar to Bont, I really feel like he's going to be a slow starter player. So maybe we'll pick him up a bit cheaper. And it's interesting. Christian Petrarca is effectively the same price as what he was last year. Maybe about 10k off, But for the amount of scoring and everything that he had, the amount of bonker scores and how strong Melbourne was and how strong he was in games as well. I know he had a few games where he just scored 100, but he had some monster games towards the end as well. And for him to kind of start this year, similar to where he started last year, is kind of telling with how not much of a need it is to actually start him. You know, you could be able to pick him up a bit cheaper throughout the year. But if players are increasing, like a Lockie Neal, like a Touk Miller kind of staying around the same, if players are increasing in price, you'd assume that they're actually going to get a lot better in scoring because, you know, they built on what they've had last year. Whereas a Petrarca, it's kind of the same. So maybe it's not someone you have to start. But then again, if you're desperate for 100K or 80K over a Rory Laird, Petrarca's a pretty good fit. I know Zach Merritt is basically the same price as what he had last year as well. And it's kind of telling as well. So similar to what I've said about a Petrarca, about them kind of having the same output as last year, it's great for us super coaches because we know that at some point he's going to be a lot cheaper. He's not going to be a Rory Laird who's going to be super expensive for the whole year. I was someone who got him around that 520K mark, and he was fantastic after the buys. And I think that's similar to where he's as well. Maybe don't start him, especially with a new coach coming in. I think they're going to be trying to play things out a little bit, work around, but definitely a trade-in option at some point. Similar to a Brayshaw as well. Did increase his price off last year, but would you pick a Brayshaw or would you pick a Bontempelli at 20K more? 20K is a little bit hard, you know, a lot easier to finesse into your team than like a 40 or 50K from a Laird to Bontempelli. I just think Freo, they're not sketchy, but can Brayshaw start the year building off what he did? He's a lot more expensive than what people kind of got him in to start with last year. And I think that's kind of telling with how many people will start him this year. George Hewitt, the gun from last year, we took him as a 400K defender and he saved a lot of people's seasons. And he kind of helped to make a bit of a gap at the start of the year from people who started him and people who didn't. I don't think many people will start him at that price. I think there's better options there. I would probably pick a Brayshaw over Hewitt at that price, kind of given what their team's like. And then I would definitely pick a Petrarca over Hewitt for 5K more. So I don't think many people are going to start him. Similar to a Cripps, I know there's been a few articles that have come out saying, hey, Cripps is ready to go. He's not going to lax from his Brownlow season. Carlton are ready, blah, blah, blah. But at 600K, it's pushing it. It's definitely pushing it. If he comes out and he completely dominates the preseason game, scores a 200, I think more people are going to pick him. But he's got to compete with Hewitt, Cripps, and Walsh, really. And that's three guys who are going to be trying to score hundreds every week. And the big thing is, I kind of saw it a little bit with Oliver and Petrarca. When one would go big, the other one would kind of be around that 100 points mark. And it seems like now Cripps has to swap with him, with Hewitt, as well as Walsh at the same time. So it's probably not, you know, I probably won't be picking him. That's all I'm saying. Similar to a Parrish as well. Did all right last year, had some monster games, huge disposal games, like huge. But I don't know if he's going to be a great starting pick. We found last year around the buys that we have enough cash generated that we're going to be able to bring players in, and Parrish might be like at that point for us. Wow. So Ross the Boss has come in. And St Kilda's in a bit of a weird spot where they're on the precipice of making finals, but also the team probably needs to rebuild a little bit. Does that mean that we keep Jack Steele in our sides? If he was 560K, 570, heck, even 580, I think he would be a lot more of a lock in people's teams than the 604 that we're starting with. 604 is rough. It's a really, really rough price point because he's only mid-selectable. Yes, he's had big games, but he's also had some stinker games. And I don't think St Kilda's mids have got that much better that you can really start him with that kind of go guarantee, yes, I'm going to pick him and he's going to be fantastic for us. So Just quickly scrolling down. So Dunkley, I reckon he's probably going to end up being the most highly picked forward this year. I think most people are going to start him. Even at that price, I think he's about 50k more than what he was last year to start with. Even, people saw how good he was. But he's about 50k more. At that price point, there's something to be said about, yes, we want to pick up mid-prices in the forward line. I think that's where we found last year with the likes of Brody, with the likes of Cherry, for example, some of those kind of players, even Cornelio as well, that there's a lot of money that can be made, but locking kind of in that F1 position is really, really important. So grabbing a Dunkley, I think he's going to end up being probably the most picked premium player. That's kind of my guess. Josh Kelly's a bit of a no for me as well. At 10, let's say if he was 550k, he would be a lot more tempting than what he is now. GWS, yes, are going to probably be playing him a lot more in the mids. He's going to get a bit more of that dominant time in the mids, especially with Hopper and Taranto out. But I doubt I'm going to pick him as a starting player. Some will, but if Mr. Tom Green is a bit further down and a lot cheaper, I think he's going to get picked a lot more. Kelly can pump out huge numbers, but it's more of a wait-and-see upgrade player. Probably a no from Wines and Boat for me. Wait and see if you bring them in. But, yeah, kind of similar thing. I'm a bit wary of picking Port's players. They're fantastic. These two are fantastic. But in a midfield that's just brought Horn Francis in and is slowly transitioning to Butters and Rosie, doing a lot more in that team, I think it's a bit wary to actually bring those two players in because you just don't know what their scoring is. And paying, 580k versus even a Patrick Cripps, who's going to be getting majority of that mid-time ball at 611k, it's too risky, right? Libber's a no from me. Hopefully he gets forward DPP at some point and we can bring him in. But to start him at the midfield, probably not. Scrolling down, similar to a Parker, he was fantastic and come round 6 when the first lot of DPPs came in for me last year. But to start him off now, I don't think so. Brad Crouch, no thanks. Hugh McCluggage, no thanks. And Will Brodie. So the guy was a gun last year, dominated, did really well. Those people that didn't start him last year or didn't bring him in early really got hurt by him because he was pumping out 100s every week. But now at 563, I just don't think he's pickable, really. Cornelio is a person there who I'm really considering in the forward line, and we'll go over him a little bit more in the forward premiums, but I reckon he could be kind of a pick. If you were to go, say, 2, 3, 4 premiums in the forward line, which would be a bit sketchy, but if you go one of those people who like to lock in premiums straight away, especially in that forwards, he could be an option there. It really comes down to where the playing rookies are. If the midfield has a lot of playing rookies, similar to what we saw last year, you stack the other positions because there's just not people available. LDU. He's one that I think you should be seriously considering. At that price point, I think he averaged, let's quickly pull up his scores. So, footy-wise, a fantastic resource if you haven't used it. We can just look up Luke Davies-Uniacke. And speaking to people on Big Footy who saw the intra-club today, he dominated. So, if we look at his last set of games, 124, 149, 110, 104, 68, okay? 119 and 141. Fantastic run home, even the 138 and the 109. If he can build on those scores this year, which the form that we're looking at the moment, he is, and the team generally getting better and Clarko coming in and trying to use him and build on that midfield, I really feel like he could be a fantastic pick at 550k. Not a Lockie Neal type like we saw, but kind of how we saw how good with Lockie Neal, how good picking up 550k around that price players did last year, and the benefits of having those because they will jump up. If LDU comes in and dominates the first JLT game or NAB game or whatever they're going to call it this year, he's a serious shout. I have a feeling I've kind of got this bias where when you're the first player or the most expensive player on a team, like we see here, there's no other North Melbourne players. It's full of Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, even Gold Coast has a guy that's 660K. Scrolling down. Carlton, St Kilda, more Brisbane, GWS, Port. Keep going down, and then North Melbourne. With Supercoach scoring, in total, a game is 3,300 points. If a club's most expensive player is 557, to me in my head, it looks like, hey, there's a lot of capacity for him to jump up in price and really increase his scoring and average without losing much in the team. The availability is there. He doesn't need to compete with a Jai Simpkin, who's also at 660K, who may take a bit of ball off him. He doesn't need to compete with a Tom Powell or a Will Phillips, who we'll talk about in a little bit. There's no other competition for LDU to really compete with the ball. It's not like there's Cornelio and Kelly who are, one will score big and the other one will score a K, or Oliver and Petrarca, similar to that. LDU is really going to be the number one man at North. And I might make a prediction now. I reckon he's going to be like 620K next year. Barring injury, barring something drastically happening, he could be around that 620K mark next year. And if that's someone who you really want to start, there's definite value there to start him this year, because he's just not competing with anyone. Yes, a Cunnington will come in and kind of get around that mark, but I think LDU's the one that's going to be bursting from the midfield. Similar to a Bont, gets the possession from the clearance, bursts through the midfield, runs up and kicks a goal. And I think he's going to do that. If he's not kicking a goal, he's kicking to someone who's open, who's going to be setting up the goal there. That's kind of my prediction anyway. Noah Anderson, no for me. I know he provided a lot of value for people last year, but they picked him at a lot cheaper price than what he is now. And when you're starting your team, you either lock in premiums and go guns and rookies, or you try and find a couple of value picks there. And I know we'll get a few with the cheaper players later in the mid prices and the fallen premiums and the fallen rookies in that sub 200K mark. There's a few there, but right now, definitely not for me. Seb Ross, no. So Tom Green. Tom Green had a fantastic start to last year. He was a lot cheaper, but he had a fantastic start to last year. And with the likes of Taranto and Hopper leaving, there's thoughts that, hey, he might come in and dominate. He might be that guy that's going to get a lot of midfield possession and a lot of clearances, which is where a lot of the scoring comes from, especially from midfielders. Yes, getting possessions and kicking the ball and handballing helps, but getting that kind of contested possession numbers up, and he'll tackle as well. When he doesn't have the ball, he'll go for a tackle. So there's definite value there. You just have to be gutsy to be able to pick him. If he can get 100, let's say he's 534. If he was to be finishing the year or giving you an average of, say 105 to 110, I think I could be happy with starting him at that price. Maybe you don't keep him for the whole year, but come the buy round, offload Tom Green and pick up a Rory Laird or someone, whoever's kind of the top 8 guy that you don't have. Scrolling down here, Chad Warner's probably a no for me. If he was sub 500K, he'd provide some real value and kind of almost force himself to be picked. But at 532, it's really got to depend on your structure at the moment. It's really, really got to go in, and it's got to fit. I think maybe let's have a quick look at his last run. I know he had a pretty good last run at Sydney. Where is he? So a lot of 100 scores, which is fantastic, especially down the bottom end. So 155, yes. 106, yes. 148, yes. 110, yes. 69, it's okay. 104, and then a couple of crappy scores. You could take the punt on him, but would I be more convinced picking up a Chad Warner or an LDU at 20K more? Would I be more happy picking up a Tom Green or a Chad Warner? Probably. And that's kind of the feeling that I've got. If he was forward eligible, he would be a real shout in a lot of people's teams. But at the moment, I just don't think you can do Zach Butters, the man that hurt last year. Oh my gosh. He came in and I had him in my team. He got injured. I took him out. Then he started scoring big again. Preseason's going to tell me if I'm going to pick him in the forward line next year, especially alongside him and a Rosie, because they are going to be moving to those two players a lot more in the preseason and into the midfield mix and dominating that midfield mix support. As we kind of spoke about Wines and Boak, maybe not slowing down, especially in the likes of Wines, but sharing a lot more. I think he's going to be there. Tom Mitchell is the one that I'm really looking at next year as a kind of cheaper price if I need to. If I've got 2 spots left and I don't have enough cash, offloading like a Tuke Miller down to a 500k player to bring in a rookie or kind of a little bit more expensive rookie, Tom Mitchell's the one. I think he's going to be a real ball distributor out of that Pies midfield. I'm going to say Hawks, out of that Pies midfield. And it really, really seems like they've brought him in to do a job, which is to grab the ball from the hit out, distribute it across. Because Pies, speaking to Magic, who I was speaking to, and listening to other people, check out the Collingwood team review. Pies kind of struggled a little bit. Their forward line was decent. The back line was really good. The hit outs were okay. But kind of getting that contested possession mark really hurt them a little bit. And I think that's kind of why they brought in Mitchell. High accumulator, but also great at just kind of handballing the ball out. Similar to, I kind of assume, a Dunkley did it a little bit at the Dogs. Jack McRae did it a little bit as well. Tom Mitchell could really come back to Brownlow form in this team. And I think he's kind of going from a team that, yes, Hawthorn are a good team, or they were a couple of years ago, but he's going to be going hard and trying to push for a premiership in like the next couple of years before he gets too old to really go for there. Collingwood are trying to push for it as well. And I think at 528k, he could easily make the 600k mark before round 6. And grab him now at this price. It's going to be fantastic for you. Pendlebury, no for me. Crisp, I'm glad he's not a defender anymore, so I don't have to think about picking him. Scrolling down a little bit, Connor Rosie as well, similar to Butters. There's value there if you're going to pick him in the forward line. You wouldn't pick him in the mids, but you're still taking a bit of a gamble. Did have massive games. I think he will get a lot more mid-time, but just have to wait and see. Brandon Ellis, no. Chera, no. Taranto's one who really fantastic pickup by the Tigers to nab him from GWS. I know they spent a lot of picks and trade value to get him in, but could really, really take on a more midfield than forward role instead of probably being a more forward mid at GWS, which is fantastic for Supercoach. But it's a real wait and see for me. At 500k, similar to a Tom Mitchell, there is some value there, but it's a real wait and see. Preseason is going to dictate a lot. If he comes out and bangs out some huge numbers in the preseason, he could almost force himself to be picked in your team. And sometimes that's great. You don't want to follow the numbers. It's not like, Tigers have come in and rested a few players and he's been an established guy who's come in and scored really well. Maybe how you would see a Prestia doing well in the preseason and thinking, he's going to score well, so let's pick him. But I think Taranto, there's definite value there. Midfield, no, not so much, unless you were going to really exploit forward-only picks in the forward line. So exploit some forward-only mid-prices there who aren't selectable anywhere else. You could pick Taranto up in the mids and then swap, as your first upgrades come in because he's a bit cheaper. But, yeah, I just don't think so. Jared Lyons, probably not. If Dunkley didn't come in, there could be potential for him to be scoring again. But I think his one good year was probably 2 years ago, and there's no real value there anymore. Jai Simpkin could be a shout with Clarko coming in, but at 40k more, I'd just pick LDU. Sarong, similar. Zach Tui, not for me. Matt Crouch. So I think he's pretty hard done by here at this price. If he was 400k, I think a lot more people would pick him than what he is now. But, But what can you do? Scrolling down, Matt Rowell, no from me. Heppel, similar. Bolton, no. Maybe if he drops to 400k after some price drops, maybe pick him up as like a cheeky upgrade, budget upgrade, that kind of thing. Dustin Martin, definitely not. Berry, no. McGrath, no. We talked about him in the defence. Jai Newcomb, I think a few people are going to try and start him just from how dominant he was in that Hawks midfield. And no Tom Mitchell. I think there's better options. He's in a weird price point where he's not a mid-pricer, so he's not, 400k sub. He's not a Tom Mitchell at 500k. It just doesn't fit. Scrolling down, Lipinski, the guy from last year. I know George loves him. I don't think anyone's going to pick him. Similar to a Whitfield, I just don't think it's there. Goulden could be a shout in the forward line, but definitely not in the midfield, I don't feel like. Similar to De Goey, if they were forward eligible to start with, maybe. I know some people got suckered into picking him last year. Could get suckered into picking him again, but at the price, definitely not. Dangerfield's a bit of a shout as well. Dealing with some injuries, at least last year. Obviously only played the 15 games, but won a premiership. I think he's just too past it at the moment. Just age really hurts. Blake Acres at Carlton's been brought in for a reason, but I just think he's too expensive. Matheson, no. Caldwell, no. We're kind of getting to these picks where they're almost too expensive to bring them in. As a speculative pick, they're really too expensive. Now, Ben Cunnington's someone who I will try and speak about. He's just come off testicular cancer. I think he had it twice last year. He does have a history of scoring really well. And if we see him dominating in the preseason, he could be a shout at that price. I know a lot of people were really hoping that he would be a lot cheaper. Maybe starting with a 3 or a 2 instead of a 4.19. But I think we were pretty hard done there. For a guy that only averaged 49, I think maybe if he played 3 games, he would have dropped down a lot, because I know there's a bit of a threshold there for players to be chosen. But unfortunately, no. There is some value there because of his scoring previously. He scored hundreds. Let's just pull him up. So, previous to last year, obviously, when he scored a 49, he's come off a season with 106, 102. I think that's where he got his big injuries. And then played 22 games, scoring a 102 and a couple of 90s. So, North Melbourne's midfield's getting better. I think Cunnington's probably going to be a big factor in that. At this price point, it's a no for me, which is really sad because I was hoping to play him this year and get excited when he does goals and when he hands off the ball. During games. I definitely will as a North supporter, but to actually start with him now, it just doesn't work. Everyone's favourite player, Jared Berry from last year, too expensive for us now. And with Dunkley coming in, I just don't think there's any options. Similar to a Zach Bailey, these guys did kick goals, did do some tagging, did do some tackling, but a lot of their strengths in their scoring was from the midfield game, and putting in another midfield player who will dominate, they've got to share the ball around a lot more, and I just don't think they've got the capacity to score anywhere else, really. Or at least score enough for us to pick them in Supercoach. Side bottom, no. Parfitt, no. Maybe a Billings if he goes back to kind of dominating form, but I just don't think it's there. Scrolling down. Lockie Hunter could be a shout. I just don't think it's going to happen. And these guys are kind of the guys who were good last year, who have made all their money, who have jumped up in price, and guys who you won't really select. So there's one here. Horn Francis, yeah, good luck. Where is he? Jacob Hopper. I think he's going to come into this season being one of the most selected players, and for good reason. If he can score... So at GWS, he did have some big scores, but also some stinkers. I think similar to what a Richmond were like a a few years ago. There's a lot of players sharing around the ball. Let's say if he can go back to a 90 average, he should be up about 450k. So him making 120k at that price point's okay. You offload a rookie who didn't score so well. Let's say offload a rookie who's 230k to a basic rookie. Okay, you've made 120k plus 450. You can get a fallen premium with Hopper and a rookie, come round 6, which is fantastic. But if he comes in and dominates and gets to, let's say, a 105 average, which at Richmond, I think he's going to get a lot of that ball, he's going to be a fantastic pickup for everybody. And I think he's going to be one of the most picked players because of that. They brought him in for a reason. They haven't brought him in to play VFL. So that's my take on it anyway. At least to start, barring preseason, that's my take for it. Hey guys, if you have any questions, you can chuck them in the comments and then I can have a look for you as well. So let's keep looking. I can look up particular players, that kind of thing. Nat Fyfe is another one who I'm most likely going to start next year. If not in the forward line, definitely in the midfield, kind of depending on what my structure's like. He doesn't have to go back to premium scoring, but a 90 puts him at 450k. The way I kind of do the scoring to price is I half. So let's say he averages 90, you half that times 10. So that's 45 times 10, 450k. That's the way it kind of figures out a little bit. It's not perfect, but it does all right. He doesn't have to score massive, but if he can average 90s, which I think is pretty easy for him, if he's fit, at least for the first 6 rounds, there is definite value there. Tom Powell, no. Howe and Thomas. Taron Thomas could be a shout, similar to the other guys. He's had some pretty poor form last year, but he seems to be doing really, really well under Clarko. So at 300k, could provide some value. He doesn't have to score premium numbers, but if he can make 90k, not 90k, if he can score 90s for the first few rounds, he's going to really jump up in price, which is all we need. We're not looking for him to be a keeper, especially in the mids, but he's going to be making some money, and all we want is money. To start the season off, we're going to have 35 trades, it looks like, again. It's not set, but I think that's the way it's going to go. And if we can offload him for, close to 200k more than what he is now, it's fantastic. Scrolling down, I don't think anyone's picking Jai Cully. And these guys are kind of players who were playing well last year. Let's have a look. No Paddy Dow, thanks. Greg Clark could be a shout, depending on how his form's going in the preseason. I think West Coast are going to be trying to play a lot more, consistent plays through that midfield, and he could be someone at that price. Scrolling down. Well, there's one here. So I don't think we should be starting Wardlaw. Yes, he was picked 2 or 3. I can't remember. It's pretty bad being a North supporter. But he's dealing with a few preseason injuries and niggles at the moment, and I think he's going to get rested through the midfield. Ooh. Let's have a quick look. Tucker. Let's have a look. Where's Tucker? Got to see all these North Melbourne players. All right. So if we want to have a quick chat about Darcy Tucker. Yes, Darcy Tucker could be potentially an option, but looking at the preseason, so I saw him 2 weeks ago when I went in and watched training. Like they do Friday, Wednesday, Monday trainings at North Melbourne. You can come and watch him in the mornings. Darcy Tucker wasn't on the field. He was doing some rehab stuff in the gym. And him speaking to a couple of the people on the sidelines there who were watching was basically saying, hey, I'm not even ready to go out on field yet and run around. This is not even getting involved in the training. This is just him going on field and running laps. He just wasn't there yet. He kind of left Freo with some leg injuries and some leg problems that they're really taking a conservative approach with him. So maybe he comes later on into the season, but I really don't think anything. I just don't think he's going to play early, barring a huge injury and, God giving him a couple of extra legs that he can grow and perform really well with. I just don't think he's someone who you can conceivably start and be happy with, especially when there's other options there. But thanks for the question. Scrolling down. There is someone here. Toby McLean could be an option. I know he was basically was a premium, I think 2018, around then when McRae really came out and started dominating. Not mid to late 20s, I guess mid to late 20s. I think he's about 26. Has come off significant injuries, could be an option there. Just a wait and see. But at that price, if he's going to play, he doesn't have to score massive. So starting off players don't have to score massive, but they do have to score. And I would have more confidence picking a Toby McLean on the bench. No, not on the field, but on the bench versus like a James Tunstall or even a Humphrey potentially or a Goda. He's only got to make 150 to 200K and he's paid for himself, which is fantastic. Where's Big Will Phillips? Here we go. So, pick 3 2 years ago. Will Phillips came off OP, came off 2 bouts of glandular fever. Didn't really play last year. Has been dominating North Melbourne's preseason at the moment. Has been kind of used as that transition link-up player. Has been talked about a little bit as Sam Mitchell, kind of how he did at the Hawks. And Clarko loves this kid. Go and look up Will Phillips' preseason training photos and you'll see how much more size he's put on since last year. And kind of his kicking is phenomenal. So I'll stop talking him up too much, but could be real value there. If he's a best 22 player, similar to Toby McLean, throwing him on the bench could really be an option. I know last year was kind of, for me at least, was a bit more of the rise of the sub 200K players. I picked up a Hobbs who ended up getting 200K off his starting price, which was fantastic. And it's still 70s and 80s over the year. He could cover a player being out through injury or suspension, grab you a 70 or an 80, and you're really happy with that, right? Versus a 20 scoring rookie. I think Will Phillips kind of offers that option there for us, but not necessarily could be someone on field. I'm not looking to play that many rookies on field anyway this year. I think there's a lot more value in that mid-price price accumulation, I guess you would call it, a price jump player. So at least to start with. So Will Phillips is a definite yes from me. Just wait and see. I have more confidence picking him over Jasper Fletcher, for example. Ed Allen's definitely there as well. And then kind of guys who didn't play, that kind of thing. Connor Blakey could be a bit of a pick. I know Gold Coast picked him up in the preseason SSP. But if he plays, right, if Connor Blakey only scores a 50, he gets to 250K. For a midfielder, if you're really stretched on the bench, there's a real option there for him. If he scores a 60 for the first 3 or 4 weeks, coming up to round 6 when our upgrades happen, he could be your first downgrade player and do really well. I think it's a real option there. I'm not sure what his injury history is like if he's ready to go, but as kind of a cheeky shout, I think it's there. I know some people have picked Charlie Constable. I'm not sure what his body's like, if he's ready to play or not. And then kind of your other rookie players there. So guys that may have scored a little bit like a Sin, that kind of thing. But I think in the midfield, we're done. Let's check out the rucks. As I said, guys, if you've got any questions, feel free to let us know and I'll have a chat about it. So Max Gawn basically started last year as the most expensive player and has started this year as the most expensive, at least Ruckman. Anyway, I won't be picking him because of a certain guy called Brodie Grundy who's now on the same team, which is really weird to say because this used to be the Ruckman run for so many years in a row. You used to pick Gawn and Grundy and you were happy, plus a 102K rookie who didn't play. And you were happy. 2 guys that were going to score you 100 plus every year, which just isn't the case. And I don't even think either of them are going to be scoring that much over 100 next year. So that idea's out the bag. So the rucks really offer some interesting insights next year. Do you go expensive rucks or do you try and find some value? Last year was a bit of a change with guys like Witts being so cheap and coming out and finishing at 600K. but also some other players who people started and then upgraded into their keeper ruckman for the year. And I think this year offers a bit more value that way as well. So you could come in and just say, yep, Wits and English going to dominate. Cool. They're my 2 rucks for the year. Spent $1 million. That's it. Happy, whatever. One of the big changes for ruckman last year was the fact that their scoring seemed to have dropped, which made guys like Wits more viable. So 2021 and the years earlier, your average ruckman, their 2022 average or their yearly average was about 120 plus. The top guys were scoring 120 plus. Last year saw a real drop in scoring. Maybe that was because more teams were playing 2 rucks. But I think just kind of the scoring had changed a little bit where the ruckman was a tap down guy and then the midfielders kind of took over a bit more. And I think that's what we're going to see a little bit now. So you're not forced too much to bring in these big players to start with. If we scroll down a little bit, so Wits is great value, set and forget, I think. Gold Coast really don't have anyone who's going to be taking a lot of points off him. It's not like a Riley O'Brien, for example, and a Thilthorpe maybe, or Todd Goldstein and whoever North want to play with him. Wits is fairly safe at his price, and 20k more than English is probably fair. Similar to a Darcy, I don't know what Luke Jackson's going to do. I don't know if Luke Jackson's going to say, hey, you brought me in to play ruck. Let's do that. Let's go 50-50. Let's go 60-40. He could end up dropping a little bit. Darcy's probably a little bit more safer just because he's had monster games. But I think they brought Jackson in for a reason. So maybe he's not a pick for me. But looking this year, if you can find a ruckman who even averages 90s, let's say 90s, and has a couple of games of 100 for 200k less, there's some real value there for you to finish your ruck line for under $1 million and put some money into other positions and get, 2 or 3 rookies off the field who are going to score you 20s. And that's kind of the big thing. People who picked Berry, who had, let's say, Horn Francis or a Dacos just here on field and had all the other positions filled with playing players who did well. They did so much better in the first 6 rounds than everyone else did and made a huge gap for other people to try and catch up in because they weren't getting Josh Ward's 18 that week. They weren't getting, Rochelle's score of a 30 over another player. It just wasn't happening. If you can fill out your team with less rookies, guys who will play, but less rookies on the field, you're doing so much better. Scrolling down, so Goldstein's there. I don't think it's really an option. But here at this 500k mark is probably where you want to start looking. Maybe a Rowan Marshall if you're happy. You take a punt. Ben King's been injured, so maybe that forces a Hayes to play a lot more forward and Marshall to come in. I know Marshall can play forward as well, so it's a bit fishy. Bruce, no. McInerney, probably not. I think Darcy Cameron really provides some huge value. He's going to be Collingwood's number 1 man. I don't think there's anyone there who can really touch him. Cox probably isn't going to do much for him either. Cox is not going to take much scoring. And if we look at it, right, Jared Witts, 605. Darcy Cameron, 465. That is 145k, 150k almost price difference. If Darcy Cameron can bring his average up to a 95 is nothing. 95 for a ruckman. He has to be a bloody shit ruckman not to score a 95 average. If he can bring his average up to a 95, it's dumb not to pick a Witts. I mean, you're saving a trade, but there's huge value there. Just scrolling down as well. I don't think Meek plays number 1. I think he plays more ruck forward. Scrolling down. I'm looking at a bit of a Sam Draper as well. So I know he's been doing really well in the preseason, kind of dominating a little bit. If he can bring his average up to a 90, being basically Essendon's sole ruckman, which I don't think is too hard to get, then yeah, I think there could be some real value there. He doesn't have to be your keeper, But if he gets to 500k at some point, spend a trade, considering we're probably going to have 35 of them, and then go and run in and get them. Someone's just commented. Yeah. So Darcy Cameron's a real shout for me. If I was going more premium heavy guns and rookies, I would do something like this. So we would go Wits, Sean Darcy, and then in the forward line, go in some form. Do something like that and play a Ruckman. You know, who's a cheap Ruckman forward? Right forward. Cool. I would do something like that. If I was going guns and rookies, that's probably what I would do. I don't know if I'm going to go that this year, but basically you've got the swing that everyone enjoyed having with English last year. Wits goes down with injury or suspension, swap in Cameron, whatever. And even in the buy rounds, I think they share different buys, which is fantastic. But I just don't know if it's kind of viable for me, but this year. But there's definitely some real potential there. Remember, the big thing is, and something that I picked up last year, is that these players don't have to be keepers. We have so many trades that there's just options. As long as you're making money, your team on field has only 18 spots to fill. If you can fill 10 or 12 of them at the start of the year with guys you want to keep, that's 35 trades that you can spend. You know, 2 trades here, 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 2 trades here. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry as much with how liberal you have to be with trades. Especially when guys are making, 200k potentially off their price. Just scrolling down, I don't think Pipnet makes much money. Hayes, no. Reeves maybe makes 50 to 100k if you're lucky. Probably not for Phillips, that kind of thing. And then you've got guys like Max Lynch who might try and take a bit of points off. I've seen a couple of teams with him in there, but we'll wait and see. Does a Tom Campbell come in and play early because of Max King's not in? And he allows Rowan Marshall to move forward? Potentially. We'll wait and see. He doesn't have to score massive, but if he makes 150k because he averages a 90 or a 95, to start the season off, if he averages 95 for the first 6 rounds, gets to 500, drop him off, see you later, thanks for your time. Perfect. And then just moving down to the ruck. So I know as a North supporter, Jacob Edwards isn't ready. Conway potentially, but I think he's developing. Asava, I have no idea what's happening with him, but he's got to play at some point, right? Samson Ryan, no. Harry Barnett could be someone. I know that West Coast are... sorry, I'm just tired. I know that West Coast get some real game time into their youth, especially when they need to fill a position. And I don't think they've really got someone to cover Nick Nat's number 2. Yes, Oscar Allen's in, but with Kennedy leaving, I think Allen might play a bit more forward. So maybe they've got some space for him there. Cool, and that kind of finishes off. Nick Madden's probably going to be the number 1 picked player, just as that ruck loophole. If not him, maybe a Phoenix Foster, if you don't like the team. But 102k, ruck forward rookie. I'm not sure what GWS's Sunday games are like, but I could really see him being picked in almost every team. All right, last position to go on, guys. Thanks for joining us. The ones who've really stuck in and had a watch for the whole time, really appreciate it. Trying to build the channel. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll get some more videos happening. Obviously, this is start of the competition's just started, but yeah, join us for the fun, hey? Now, we've already talked about Dunkley. I think he's going to be number 1 picked in the forward line. I think you're going to be silly not to pick him, especially with Brisbane. I think there's going to be some real potential for him to go. It's not similar numbers, but pretty close. He's going to be sharing a lot with the other Brisbane mids like Neil, but we'll see what happens. Cornelio is someone who I'm really considering with the other GWS players leaving. If he can come and see what happens. Then we'll see what happens with there. Heaney. So it was 100K cheaper to start with last year, and I'm still considering him now. So it kind of tells you what mindset I'm in at the moment. Okay. I'm going to build a team after this just for you, mate. Just wait and see. Hawkins, not so much. Zach Butters, we've already kind of spoke about a little bit. If he can dominate that Port midfield, I think there's real option there. If he can, if you said to me, Zach Butters, would you start him if he's going to get to 600K and average like a 105? I think I probably would, right? I think a lot of you guys watching and those guys at home who watch the repeat probably would as well. More similar as well. Let's just check out Dylan Moore from the Hawks. I know a lot of people have been pretty hot on him, and let's kind of see why. Okay, I can see why. Start of the season had about a 90 or odd average. Yes, a 147 is great, but the last half of the year, bang, 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 bang. Big, big, big scores. Similar to an LDU type scoring, not as good, but forward eligible, it's huge. So he's an option there. And then you've got your general key forwards like you always have: Hawkins, Lynch, Cameron. We've spoken about Tim Taranto and Rosie before in the mids. Himmelberg, yes, as well. Charlie Dixon, not so much. So guys who were a lot cheaper last year, like your Kerno, like your Lipinski. Do you think Charlie Kerno was 220K? And he ended up on, lucky if you picked him. Goulden as well. Darcy Cameron, who we spoke about in the Rucks. Finlayson, yeah. Rory Lobb's a bit of an interesting pick. Depending on what he does, I don't know if a lot of people realise, but he kicked 44 goals last year and was basically Freo's #1 goal kicker. So if he can come in and do something similar, it doesn't have to dominate, but if he's a forward ruck who comes in and kicks 44 goals, or let's say 50 goals next year, boy, he could end up being up here come round 6 and 7. Bit of those people who took a punt on English to start with last year, or Trelaw to kind of start with last year. There's some actual value there if you're lucky. I don't think Jed Anderson does much. Probably around the same similar scoring, more of a depth play for them. Mackay, no. Franklin, no. Is anyone really available? Toby Green could be someone who you're a bit cheeky if you've got to bring someone in. We've spoken about Cunnington before. Logue as well. Is anyone really here? Maybe I've just passed over someone. Rankin's someone who probably, if he gets to 500K, he could be a bit of a shout, but you just wait and see. I don't think I'm gutsy enough to pick him. Jack Siebel's going to be playing in the backline again, so maybe there's some kick-in type role if we're lucky. Let's keep going. Mason Cox, definitely not. Guys, if there's anyone I've missed, just let me know in the chat box. Okay. Just scrolling down. Taron Thomas is definitely there. Look, I know I'm harping on Taron Thomas a little bit, but if he even comes back to some form, if he scores a 90 average, 450K, right? That's all I'm saying. There's a lot worse picks for that price if you're really stuck. And if you look at his scoring from 2 years ago, last year was a bit of an anomaly. Got injured, that kind of thing. Didn't really have a great score. Got injured, I think, around here or here, and then obviously bottomed out. But if that was his scoring at 300K in your forward line, at least for the first, let's say if this was the first few rounds, you'd be pretty happy, right? Fife, I did mention a little bit in the forward line. I definitely think he's going to be a pick, especially in the, as a forward mid-pricer. I think Fife's a real shout. Anyone else? No. And then you kind of come into your Phillips type guys. So people who did all right last year. I don't think Sheasel's a real pick. Fantastic player and will score goals and do well. But, forwards, just kind of guys who are generic forwards are really tough to pick in Supercoach, especially at that price. I know a lot of us got burnt by Rochelle last year. Liam Henry's been dominating the preseason. If you haven't seen his picks, boy, but I just don't think it's an option. And then Toby McLean's and stuff as well that we spoke about a bit before. Josh Bruce could be a real shout if he has a best 22 spot. If he scores a 50, he makes 250K. So there's a 90K off his scoring. If he averages a 60, it's even better. 65, it's even better. That's only like 2 goals a game. Or not even like 2 goals. Let's say 1.5 goals. The thing is, though, you say hell no, right? But he just has to. He doesn't have to do it the whole season. He's just like a cheaper, a better, cheaper rookie. We'll wait and see what happens. Alrighty. Let's have a go at building a team. I've been asked to build a team just as we're finishing up. One sec. Pumping it in the Discord, building my full team. Let's go. So, we've had a bit of a look at the backline, and it looks like stacking the backline is probably the way to go. Because there really isn't that mid-price or cheaper value in there. You've got guys like McKenna who could potentially play, even though I think I just don't think it's going to happen. But we'll wait and see. So, big scorers from last year. I think Sinclair's going to drop off a little bit. Sicily might be a shout to start with, similar to a Tom Stewart. SDK coming in. Okay. Redmond, yes, did really well. I'm kind of just waiting to see what Brad Scott kind of does with the team. So he's definitely there, especially at 500K. He's really, really there. All right. So let's be a bit cheeky, right? I don't want Doherty to start with. Ooh. Can I get away with doing this? Jordan Dawson killed me last year not having him, so I really just can't not. Let's go a Redmond to start with. I think there's position there. If he can take a lot of the kick-ins, which he did at some points during the year last year, I think there's a real option. My brain tells me to go and Nick Dacos. Is that too expensive? Yeah, probably. Obviously, this is just going to muck around, but we'll see if anyone's really available at this price. I really want to go a bit cheeky. I might pick a Jackson Archer. Where is he? Connor McKenna. And then 2 basement rookies. And again, kind of gives you some money to play around with too. So, if Jackson Archer's not there and you wanted 2 180K guys, you kind of got your price. So, backline, somewhat completed, let's say. Let's go Rucks. I'll leave my midfield there. There's a lot of money to be made in the midfield, but also some very expensive players. So generally, unless there's guys who I really want, I try and fill out the value first. So what did we say? Darcy Cameron. I think there's better players to play in the forward line this year, so let's not start him there. Let's go a Draper and then a cheapy boy. Cool. All right. So I've got $3 million each to play in other positions, which isn't too bad. if I can get a forward line for, let's say, just under 3 mil, I can put a lot of money in here. So what we do here is we go and find those really good value options that we had. So Toby McLean, do we say yes? I don't think he's going to play too much, but there's something there. Who else can we pick? I really want Mitchie Owens to do well next year. No, where's Fife at? Come on, Fifey. Let's go. Taron Thomas is there. Let's go. Where is Fife? Let's go 5. Who else, guys? Who else did we see who I was talking about in the forward line? Do you remember? Okay, so that's 3 players. So let's say how much there? 5.2. Okay, only 800k spent. So let's see. I don't think I want to play 5. I'm probably missing someone. But let's go the more expensive guys now. So 1, 2, let's say a Rosie, and then 2 cheapy guys to finish off the midfield. And then we should be all right in the price value. And this is probably team 1 of like a million, just letting you guys know. So as you know, when you make a super coach team, there's a lot of mucking around to do. So you probably delete after this and then start all over again. Eddie Ford's not much of a shout, but let's go Big Charlie Condon. And so that's 5. 5, would I be easily taking those 5? Probably. So let's say Finlay McRae. Cool. All right. So this is a lot of money left. That's a lot of money. 3,400. That's a lot. So let's start with our cheaper players to start with. So we want 3 guys on the bench who are going to make money. Okay. They could be more expensive guys, but let's go Joe Richards. I think he might try and play early. I think Collingwood were pretty happy with starting him. So let's go a Joe Richards, and where was he? Connor Blakey's pretty happy. And let's go Will Phillips, right? Really nice, really nice 3 players. Will Phillips could even be on field if you were lucky. Okay. So a bit of a trick that I do is I usually do this from the start. Hopefully it pops up because I'm just sharing screen. That works for you guys. All right, cool. So I look at how much value I've got. How much money do I have left? Okay. I go 3 million. 3 million divided by how many players do we need? So that's 8 players on field. Cool. So my average price left is 375. All right. So let's go in here and we find Mr. Hopper because we've been talking about it. Easy. Cool. So if we just put up this, we go, I think he's about similar price, but just from trying it out, we go 67050. 7.5 divided by 7, because we need to fill 7 players. Okay. So if we come in and we have a look at it, and we want to probably get Hopper would be there. So let's try and look at a 250k player if we can, and then we pick up a rookie, and then we can fill out the team with some really expensive players. Maybe we don't even need the rookie. We'll just have a look. So is there anyone around the 250k mark that we're kind of looking at who we could pick? We could be cheeky and try and put someone else in the forward line, but let's just have a quick look. If anyone can think of anyone, let me know in the chat. Or I can just make someone up. Obviously, this is maybe not the exact player that we're looking at, but just some options there. Okay, so let's say Will Phillips plays on field. I need another cheapy rookie. Okay, let's go Ed Allen. They seem pretty happy with him. Supercoach is all about being able to fit players in. So if you ever get stuck, then doing it this way kind of helps. Divided by 7. Cool. All right. So now I can bring in 400k players. All right. Not too bad. So where did Mr. Hopper go? Here. Cool. All right. So now if we pull up our calculator again. So 2548 divided by 6. Cool. All right. If I bring in one more rookie, then I think I can basically afford everyone who's premium left and guys who are decently premium priced too, which would be great for us. So let's try and find a cheaper rookie to bring in. Let's say who can play. Well, let's say, oh no, Finlay McRae won't play. Let's go Cam Butchers. All right. Cool. All right. Now we can build our team. So I think someone here who has to be affordable we have to bring in is probably our big Tom Mitchell. I think he's going to be our sneaky starting pick. I think we can afford our... Where's Mr. Cunnington? Remember, he doesn't have to score that much, but if he gets to 520k, he's made our money and scored well for us. So I can afford 3 players. Let's go a Mr. Consistent and it's really tough, eh? I'm glad you found your team. All right. Let's go for craziness sake. Let's just try that. I don't think it's going to happen, but just for right now. Mid-pricer. Icono's there, actions there. Lead, hopper, thingy, grey, common, done. Cool. So there's just a quick play around team. It's obviously not going to be my starting team. Just have to work out some players to bring in. But it's somewhere to kind of go from first. Well, guys, that's me for today. I'm going to have a bit of a play around with Supercoach. And I hope you guys have lots of fun. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. We're going to be pumping out a lot of Supercoach content this year. But I'm really glad that we could kind of start this off. Thanks for watching those guys who've stuck around. And have a nice day, guys. Bye.